We need it. Oxygen. It's why we breathe.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Grit Files. I am your host, Loralyn Mears, and we have, well, as you know, every week we have an incredible guest, but this guest, well, he's into wine. And as you know, if you've had podcasts from me that you've heard before, not to mention the Wine Down and Chill series that I had for several years with hundreds of podcasts talking to people about wine, I'm really excited. We are bringing to you today live from Accolade Wines, Enrique Morgan, who is the managing director of the Americas. This is one of the largest wine groups in the world, representing all kinds of brands you've heard of, constantly innovated the way things are done. And bottom line, they bring wine to us. Enrique, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Loralyn. I'm super, super happy to be here.
Well, as I said, just small confession. I like wine. And the bad red wine that I drink, well, I end up painting with it. So there you go. Why not?
There's no such thing as bad wine. As long as it's in your glass and you're enjoying it, then it's good wine.
Oh, there you go. Right. So all this stuff, all the moderation. So tell our audience how you got into this whole wine scene.
Sure, absolutely. So, I never meant to go into this business, which is, it's funny how life does these sort of twirls and circles around you, and it sort of directs you in different directions, even though I had everything planned out. But oddly enough, I'm originally from Chile, and I was born into a family that in one way or another has always been involved in grape growing, winemaking, and sort of it's been with me since infancy, if you will. But it really sort of culminated when I graduated university. I went to university out in California. I studied at Cal State Monterey Bay State School. Double major in international business with an emphasis in finance and international relations. And, it was sort of during that time where you thought you could graduate from school and, job offers were going to be raining in, and obviously as you would. And it was definitely not the case at all in any shape, way, or form. So, sort of very quickly had to reinvent myself. I was living in my buddy's couch in his garage, like literally, I didn't really have a place to stay. And what I needed was to find a job, right? So, but I knew that I had to be a little bit picky. I didn't want to go back to bartending or serving tables, or like I needed a job that was going to start to develop me, right? So I found this amazing company online. It wasn't online, it was through a recruiter. And it was called Gallo Sales Company, as it was a wine company, Ernest and Julio Gallo. And
of course,
I started, I think I was assistant merchandiser, right? I mean, it was sort of like getting up at 4:30 in the morning with a suit and tie to go throw boxes around in, dirty gas stations and, supermarket alleys and things of that sort. And you were sort of thinking every day, is this the real reason why I just spent the better part of 4.5 years studying to get a degree? And it was probably the job I hated the most at the moment, but probably the job I admire and I appreciate the most today in my life, right? With the utmost respect. So it taught me real world. It taught me how to deal, how to sell. It taught me how to be an entrepreneur in everything I do. It taught me how to sort of put things into perspective and really harness things and take advantage of, opportunities that you've got in front of you, right? So it's just an amazing educational platform for me. I spent a good chunk of almost 4 years there. Then I got recruited by sort of a competitor of theirs. I always wanted to go into international business. It was called Constellation Brands. And I ended up working in international business with them. I think it's worthwhile mentioning that while I was at Gallo, I very quickly understood what I needed to do to get going, right? So I saw that I could sell. I saw that I could take my boss's role. I saw that I could do all these different things, and I could use them for sort of educating myself and improving myself. So very quickly, I became a assistant sales manager, area sales manager, district sales manager, just started to sort of prove it. So anyways, then I got recruited to Constellation Brands. I spent a good chunk of time there, between 10 and 11 years out at Constellation Brands. working in international business, setting up a division over in Asia, working in Canada, Latin America, and over in the US business in marketing, sales, finance, sort of the broad spectrum. Then I worked over at Treasury Wine Estates for 8 years, which is sort of primarily Australian and US wines, high end. And today, I got an opportunity to go manage an entire organization in North America. And that's where I'm at today. So sort of 22 years later in this career, from putting on a suit and tie at 4:30 in the morning and chucking boxes to sort of managing a division. It's been a hell of a ride. It's been amazing.
I can imagine. Now, one of the things that are, well, two themes, I think, that our audience is always interested in. One, they love hearing that people have gone from, kind of the dark side of things. Like you said, waking up at 4:30 in the morning, literally in the dark, like just schlepping. You started there, but look where you are now, not necessarily a rags to riches story, but a story of triumph all the same, though our audience loves those. The other story that our audience really loves to hear about is, what have you done when you've had those just impossible, horrible, like the worst days ever in your life? How do you find the strength to keep going and finding the new thing and the next thing?
So I think the first of all is to identify the fact that those are common, right? And they happen quite a bit. And I noticed a pattern that they were happening to me a lot more earlier in my career than later on in my career, or when I was doing newer things. And it wasn't because they weren't happening later on. It's just, how to deal with them and how to manage them better on. So they're not as impactful today as they were 20 years ago, right? So, I thought early on, they were quite daunting, and I couldn't deal with them till I figured out really what was the premise of those days. And it wasn't that things were difficult. It was just those days inserted in me a lot of doubt. What am I doing? Am I wasting time? Am I just spinning my wheels? Is this worth it? Right. And at the end of the day, I think that in majority of situations, you have to go back and tell yourselves, absolutely, it is worth it, because it's all about attitude and a lot about perception, how you actually look at that. Right. So if you're fierce enough, if you're driven enough, even in a really bad situation, you're gonna find the positive outcome. You're gonna find the educational piece. You're gonna find the growth out of those days. If you focus on finding the growth out of those days, those weeks, sometimes months, hopefully not years, but it happens, right? If you can focus on finding that growth, it actually becomes quite a process for you that you seek out every once in a while to sort of get back into rhythm. So you got to understand them and face them. You can't avoid them.
What's interesting to hear from you is that you sound very much like an introspective kind of guy.
Yeah.
And in this world that we live in now, it really behooves us to take a deeper look into what's going on. How are we behaving? What are we doing internally or thinking internally that's being projected outwards, and how others are receiving us? But we got to start with what's going on inside of us. And to that end, that level of self-awareness often brings up questions like, oh my God, I never should have done X. I wish I would have done Y, right? So if I gave you an undo button and said, Enrique, you get to hit it once for anything, what are you going to undo?
I'm not going to undo anything.
What says that?
Yeah, I'm not going to, and I'm sure I'll be kicking myself in the head for saying that, but I'm not going to undo anything. I wouldn't be who I am today if I undid those experiences that I don't appreciate, right? We all have, right? And they're all there. And I think I'm at fault of this, and I think a lot of people in your audience might be, sort of a victim of sort of being an overthinker, over analytical, right? And that's because you really want to push yourself to the highest degree. You really want to make sure that everything you do, you maximize that effort, you maximize the result, you maximize the output. Well, sometimes it's not about the result. Sometimes it's not about the output, right? Because the way that what builds you, the way that you sort of deal through those things sort of constructs you internally, so that you can actually, when you're faced with a situation that it is all about the output, you're actually going to be better off in dealing with it. right? But you have to go through that process to get there. So I at the end of the day, I think it's you can't be an overthinker, you can't be an over analytical, and you just sort of have to keep going and take things in stride.
So that's a perfect segue for the next question I was planning on asking you anyway, all about the journey. And I'm curious, how have you changed since being, that guy at 4:30 in the morning working for, the Gallo brothers, right? I mean, renowned for what they've done as far as putting
Yeah.
California on the map and winemaking and all of the rest of that. But how have you changed?
Well, I think change is inevitable. I think we grow up, we mature, sometimes faster than others. We, look at things in different retrospects. I'll start off by saying how I haven't changed. And the first things that I've noticed, ambition continues to drive my everyday in my professional life, right? I'm just ambitious. I want to keep going. And let me be clear, ambitious doesn't mean more. It doesn't mean the bigger paycheck. It doesn't mean a bigger title. Ambition is just continue to prove to yourself that you can do it, that you can solve it, that you can go after it, that you can continue to grow. I think that ambition continues to be there. How you change, I think, is how you learn how to deal with sort of the fire drill, right? How you deal with the short term, the medium term, the long term, right? You allow yourselves for a lot more wiggle room, a lot more adjusting, flexibility, elasticity in the short term, as long as your medium and long terms are continued to be on par and sort of shooting for the same star. So you're not sort of deterred by the everyday turbulence. You're okay with it, right? When before it was like, oh, a little shift, oh, everything's gonna burn down. So hang on, we can figure this out. We're still going north. We're still going the same direction, and that gives you a lot more retrospective. And then the other piece is that I've learned is that I believe, and I think I've really worked on this, is that you are really potentialized by the people that you surround yourself and by the teams and your colleagues that you work with. I don't want to say I'm nothing without them, but I do want to recognize the fact that without the right people around you, without the right circle, both professionally, family, friends around you, it makes the journey really difficult, really, really difficult. So I put a lot more emphasis in those circles today than I did back then, to make sure. By the way, it tends to be fewer but better. But it is incredibly important. A lot of focus and emphasis on that.
I follow that less is more philosophy too.
Yeah.
Yes. Higher quality, right? Lower quantity. It's all good, right? Especially when it comes to wine. So let's
Yes.
bring that back around. I want to come back to Accolade Wines, but I do want to ask you, you raised something where you're talking about some of these perturbations that we all face as we're going through our life, our job, our, whatever it is, our day. Everybody's got something that takes them out at the knees. Like, what's your kryptonite?
My kryptonite to me, I think, is uncertainty, right? So I have this mind that loves an Excel spreadsheet, right? And it's like
Well, you're one of those guys. Okay.
Yeah, and I sort of, if I have a plan in my head, like I put it, like I don't open up a Word document, I open up an Excel spreadsheet, and I do it unconsciously, right? So this uncertainty brings me to my knees and sort of weakens me. And it's like this inability, and it sort of takes me over sometimes. I have this inability to make decisions, and I find it really difficult. And I go back, we should do that. No, maybe this. No, maybe that. No, maybe this. And hang on, let me go back and think about it. Let me go back and, when I face that uncertainty in whatever aspect in life, I have to understand what my strengths are, right? And my strength is, first of all, my biggest strength is my family, right? So to me, my family is my rock. Like that's where it all comes back to, my home. And by the way, my home could be anywhere, right? So anything, right? As long as my family's there, that's my home. I could be in a hotel if you want, right? Like doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, you gotta have faith and you gotta believe in yourself, right? So I always say it's 90% hard work, but there's that 10% of you got to have that faith, you got to have that trust, you got to have the ability to take that leap, and that's how I cover that kryptonite. It's a good challenge. It's a good work.
All right. Well, now let's get back to the part that I really love talking about, wine. Like your new Prosecco, which I haven't tried, that you've just launched. And my girls and I, we are Prosecco girls. Every time we get together, we try to mix it up a little bit differently. Sometimes we add a little limoncello and a couple of frozen raspberries just to make it, a little extra. Otherwise, it's just, yeah, from the bottle. There we go. Right. So why don't you talk to us about the innovation that's being brought into Accolade Wines and in the parent, the Carlisle Group, because it's not what we're used to seeing, really, when we think of sort of the big brands, the Constellations and other groups that synthesize all of these brands together and bring them out. It's more about distribution channels and efficiencies and optimizations and all of that kind of thing. Talk to us about your role in the Americas and how you're changing things up here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're hitting it spot on. The first thing is that it's a lovely prosecco. I love this prosecco.
I'll try it soon.
I love drinking bubbles. I think it's enjoyed very responsibly. You can enjoy it throughout the day with a beautiful brunch, or in the evening or at night. Like it's just very flexible. So I'm super excited about bringing the hardened prosecco to the market. Incredibly excited about this partnership that we've done with James Harden, big NBA star, but a lot more than just an NBA star. This ability to influence younger consumers, younger people, ability to influence sort of media, ability to influence crowds. It's something that you have to recognize and sort of admire, and how our world has changed so much, right? And I can't necessarily compete against these amazing companies like Gallo or Constellation or Treasury. We're just not there yet. So I got to think different about the business. And one of the things that we're doing different is that I think that traditional companies have been very much laser focused on managing supply chain, managing cost, managing route to market, managing distributor partnerships, right? And it's almost like a lot of time, energy, and emphasis and investment is spent there. And I think they're very important. I'm not undermining the importance of those things, but I had to do something different. And what we really sort of took a step back, we just really approached and sort of said, what does the consumer want? What's the consumer looking for? And by the way, who is the consumer, right? So with this partnership with James, we're really looking at targeting a consumer base that hasn't really been looked at in the wine space previously, right? Really looking at a younger consumer, a consumer that generally doesn't fit that traditional sort of, Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon or Bordeaux style blend, that are looking for that, but is still looking for really high quality product, really looking for something that they can attach themselves to and relate to themselves in that brand. And that's really where our innovation is coming up for the US market, for the Canadian market, for the Latin American market. And we're starting to take that sort of worldwide. Again, really listening to the consumer, connecting through them through different channels, and taking that. So we're incredibly excited.
One of the things you talked about a couple of times, made reference to how markets are changing and trying to reach this younger demographic. We're also seeing a huge trend of eschewing alcohol, right?
Sure.
Low alcohol, no alcohol, mocktail bars, never mind dry January. Now, I recently learned there's a second month in there, sober October. Like, pretty soon it's going to be, all of the months that end in RY, and so talk to us about how that is forcing a shift in what you do and how you engage with consumers.
Sure. And I'll be the first one. So I've been in the alcohol business for 22 years, right? And right now it's probably one of my biggest priority to be healthy, be fit, enjoy my family, enjoy my kids, have a long life, right? So I love this trend, right? And I think, science, our technology has really bolstered us to be able to actually start providing opportunities and start providing products that can actually continue to have all the amazing qualities from a taste profile of wine, spirits, beer, sparkling wine, with either really low alcohol or non-alcoholic drinks completely, right? Which lowers caloric intake, obviously lowers alcohol intake, sugar intake, all these different things that we've known are starting to really see that are very beneficial for the body, very beneficial for ourselves. It is a trend that is growing multiples, right? It's going really, really big. It's definitely part of our future. It's definitely how we're doing it. And, we're probably within 3 to 6 months of launching 2 non-alcoholic brands across the market. Yeah, non-alcoholic wines through sort of a different proprietary technology where we're able to keep the structure of the wine. Now, I have to be honest, alcohol adds a component to wine that if you remove it, you remove that component. So it's a different tasting wine, but it is wine at the end of the day, right? So stay tuned for that, because I think the industry is very quickly turning towards this niche. And I think that people are starting to practice sort of, I'll have wine tonight and I'm going to have 2 glasses of regular wine and I'm going to have 3 glasses of non-alcoholic wine, right? Or I'm going to have 2 glasses of non-alc beer and then I'll have 1 regular beer. And that's it. And they're really limiting, controlling, and drinking responsibly, which again, I personally, I never thought I'd say this. I'm all for it. I support it. I think it's great.
I do think so. And it's just bending to what the audience is looking for and how things change over time, right? Our perceptions. I think back, to the days when I was a child, a really long time ago, and looked at my parents and everybody else. It was nothing. No one wore seatbelts. You certainly didn't put your kid in a car seat. People smoked and drank, their beer in the front of the seat of the car while they were driving, right? That's just kind of how you did it.
Exactly how we did it.
Thankfully, right? We've evolved from there. One of the other favorite wine trends that I've been tapping into, and I really am looking forward to this, I guess, mock wine, or I don't know, whatever you'll call it, faux wine, no alcohol wine, and looking forward to seeing that. Now that does affect the whole experience on the palate. But that said, one of the other trends that I've seen a lot of is pink, like rosé, is making a big comeback, and not just amongst us gals that like to lunch and do a rosé all day, but for everybody else, and that there's a lot of appetite incoming from even the male population. So can you talk to us about what you're seeing there?
Yeah, of course. I think, it's a trend that it's been around for a long time, but it's really gained popularity over the past 4 or 5 years, right? And it's because it's bringing sort of that refreshing, light, easy to drink taste profile. But, previously pink at the beginning of my career was associated with sweet, like really sweet, right? And sweetness comes from sugar, right? Going back to the trend that we just talked about, I think as we reduce those sugars, we reduce sort of that overall sweetness, people are really leaning towards these pink wines. And the rosé wines gives us a bit more breathing room from a packaging perspective to present things a bit sexier, a bit different, venture on to a little bit more of like a perfume style bottle, or sort of champagne world a little bit. And it also opens up the occasion because you're drinking a big, heavy red wine, which I love, generally with a meal, right? So you sort of narrow that occasional drinking down to a very specific time frame during the day, right? Pink, rosé, lighthearted wine, sort of a little bit higher in acidity, easier to drink, is something that you can sort of mix in with brunch. You can sort of mix in different occasions, at a club, at a bar, Sunday afternoon. And also we can get away with lower alcoholic content without affecting the taste, and generally these light tasting wines, right? So it gives us a bit more breadth of scope to play into this role, sort of better for you, better for me, better for the environment concept that I think everybody's very, very into nowadays.
Well, so now you've got me intrigued too, so that there's bottle art and things coming. I had the good fortune of working for a Fortune 10 consumer goods company, and had the opportunity to go tour perfumeries, flavor houses, and saw a lot of the glassworks that were being designed for these. And it's incredible the innovation that can come in. But back to the pinks, one of the things I'm very curious about is, I don't know if it's a myth, I don't know if it's just whatever it is, we're gonna bust it right now, Enrique. Is light pink higher quality and more expensive than dark pink, or is this a leftover perception that we have from the era of like Baby Duck and stuff in the 1970s and Riunite, right?
Yeah, no, I know exactly where this is coming from. I'll start out by saying this. Where does the actual color come from? That color is given from the time the grape, the juice is spent in contact with the skins of the grape, right? So the longer, and I'm simplifying the process tremendously, but I want to make it sort of understanding. So the longer time that we spend in contact with sort of that grape skin, the darker color we will have from that influence, or we'll have on that wine. Now, there is out there people that would say, yeah, higher quality grapes, higher quality sort of grape sources that you use for some of our rosés or some of these pink wines don't need that much contact. So a lighter pink generally is associated with a bit of higher quality, but it's not necessarily a true rule of thumb, right? Back in my time, a pretty dark pink color meant pretty sweet, right? And it was sort of kind of, syrupy and chunky. So today, I think rosés have evolved, and you've got good quality and, sort of not so good quality in all sorts of shades of pink, but all are sort of skewing more towards that lighter color because of that perception from the consumer.
Got it. And so, as we're bringing this podcast home, you've been wonderful here talking to us about Accolade Wines and all the innovation that you're bringing in with, oh my goodness, I can't even wait for it. I think more pink things in pretty bottles,
Yes.
and sounds like some wines without alcohol. What can our audience do for you? How can we support you?
I think, first of all, go out and enjoy our products, try our products. We are out in retailers across Texas, across Florida, across California. We're in distribution in many states, all over the country. Everything from our Mud House Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, which is beautiful, crisp, amazing wines that we bring to the market, to our DeLuca Proseccos, to our J. Harden red wines, and obviously the Prosecco that's out in the marketplace. Go out and try it, and then go to our website and tell us what you think, right? I really want to become this company that is listening to our consumers, listening to our customers, and taking that to heart and making the right adjustments. I want to hear what the public says about our products, because we try and we put in a lot of energy and a lot of investment to make things that are better for you, better for you to enjoy, better for your health, better for everything. We use recyclable glass. We're trying to make sure that we're covering all of sort of our environmental cues and be as responsible as we can with our environment. That's something that I'm really proud about the company that I work for. We take that so to heart, and there's so much work that goes into that. I mean, it's just, we need another podcast to talk about that, but it's so extensive, right? So I want our listeners, your listeners, to give us their true, honest feedback, so that we can continue to improve. There was a very famous man in the wine business. His name is Robert Mondavi, who used to always say, we're always in the endless pursuit of perfection, right? And those are sort of words that I like to live by, because I think we need to continuously improve in everything that we do, obviously, on number one in our careers.
As someone who chained herself to old growth trees to prevent clear cutting to save the environment, I applaud all of the efforts that Accolade Wines is doing to bring these efforts in sustainability. And just everybody in the audience, Grit Files folks, you heard it here from Enrique Morgan. He wants you to go out, try their products, and give feedback. We've been invited to go do some work, and I think we should all take that assignment very, very seriously. Last question to bring it home here, Enrique. This is my signature question for my Grit Files podcast. If we got a chance to peek into your closet, and there was a pair of footwear in there, boots, shoes, whatever it is, that personified who you are, what are we looking at?
You're going to see a pair of some pretty classic Converse, either blue or khaki, something that I can feel comfortable, I can wear with jeans, I can wear with denim, whatever I want. You're going to find some good pair of good old Converse, nice and worn in.
There you go. Everyone, you heard it here. Enrique Morgan, Managing Director of the Americas for Accolade Wines. I want to thank you and your team for taking the time to come over here to the Grit Files and do this podcast, and invite us all to go sample some of the new things you have and give you a little bit of feedback so that you can keep dialing into what consumers want. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you so much, Loralyn. You've been amazing. Have a great day.
And how about that fantastic intro by Touch Circle?